The massive transport ship touched down at Seoul Spaceport with a deep rumble that shook the ground. Steam rose from its landing thrusters as the hull cooled in Earth's atmosphere. Captain Lee Jae-ho stepped down the metal ramp, his boots hitting solid ground for the first time in 3 years. He looked different now, much different. Where a thin, scared boy had left, a man returned. His shoulders were broad and strong. His eyes held depths that came from seeing things no human should see. The uniform he wore carried medals that few people on Earth would recognize, but they told stories of battles fought among distant stars. Jae-ho carried a single bag over his shoulder. Everything else he owned was either destroyed in combat or left behind on military bases scattered across the galaxy. He did not mind. Material things meant little after watching entire colonies burn, and then helping to rebuild them. The spaceport was busy with travelers and cargo workers. Most people walked past without looking at him. They had no idea that this quiet man had stood against the Nexari Empire when their ships first appeared in human space. They did not know he had learned to fight creatures that were twice his size and had been warriors for centuries before humans even discovered fire. His first stop was not his family home. His parents lived only 20 minutes away by transport, but Jae-ho had something else he needed to do first, something he had thought about during long nights on alien battlefields when the shooting stopped and silence filled the trenches. He walked through the familiar streets of his old neighborhood. The buildings looked smaller than he remembered. The problems that had seemed so big when he was 18 now felt tiny compared to what he had faced out there in the dark between stars. Soon he reached his old high school. The gates were open and students were walking home for the day. They looked so young to him now, so innocent. They laughed and talked about tests and friends and small dramas that would be forgotten in a week. Jae-ho remembered being their age. He remembered walking through these same gates every morning with fear in his stomach, fear of what Kim Dong-woo and his friends would do to him that day. Fear of the words they would say and the ways they would find to make him feel small and worthless. He walked into the main building. The hallways smelled the same. The lockers were painted the same dull green color. But now he saw it all differently. The place that had once felt like a prison now looked like what it really was. Just a building full of children learning to become adults. Mrs. Park was still in her classroom grading papers. She was older now with more gray in her hair, but her kind eyes were the same. She looked up when he knocked on the doorframe. For a moment she did not recognize him. Then her face lit up with surprise and joy. Jae-ho, my goodness, look at you. She stood and walked over to him. Without thinking, she reached out to touch one of the medals on his chest. It was made from metal that did not exist on Earth. Metal taken from a Nexari command ship that he had helped capture. You made it, she said softly. You really made it. Yes, ma'am. I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? For telling me I was stronger than I knew. For saying I had something special inside me. You were right. Mrs. Park smiled, but her eyes were sad. I always knew you would find your way, but I am sorry it took you so far from home to do it. Jae-ho nodded. Sometimes we have to go far away to learn who we really are. They talked for an hour about his time in the service. He could not tell her most of it because it was classified, but he shared what he could. About the friends he had made. About the worlds he had seen. About learning that humans were not alone in the universe and that they were capable of amazing things when they had to be. When he finally left the school, the sun was setting. Tomorrow he would see his family. Tonight he would walk through his old neighborhood and remember the boy who had left this place behind. The boy who had been weak was gone forever. In his place stood someone who had helped save humanity itself. The next morning, Jae-ho decided to walk through the town center before visiting his parents. He wanted to see how much had changed while he was fighting wars in distant galaxies. The coffee shops and small stores looked mostly the same. People hurried past with their daily concerns, unaware that their world had almost ended 3 times while they slept. He stopped at a small restaurant for breakfast. The owner, an elderly man named Mr. Kim, recognized him immediately. "Little Jeho, you grew up well," the old man said with a warm smile. "Your mother comes here sometimes. She talks about you constantly." "Very proud." Jeho smiled back. "Thank you, sir. The food smells just like I remembered." As he ate, three men walked into the restaurant. Jeho recognized them instantly, though they had changed over the years. Kim Dong-woo had gotten soft around the middle. His expensive suit could not hide the fact that he spent his days sitting behind a desk instead of doing real work. Park Ta-min was still big and muscular, but there was something different about him now. Something smaller. The third man made Jeho's jaw tighten. Choi Byung-ho looked exactly like what he had become, a small-town bully who never learned that the world was bigger than his tiny kingdom. His clothes were flashy and expensive, but his eyes held the same cruel gleam they had possessed in high school. At first, they did not notice him. They sat at a corner table and talked loudly about their businesses and their money. They complained about taxes and workers and how the government was ruining everything. Their voices carried the same arrogance they had shown as teenagers. Then Dong-woo looked over and saw him. His face went through several expressions at once. Surprise, confusion, and then something like fear. "Is that?" he whispered to his friends. Ta-min turned to look. His eyes widened. "No way. That cannot be him." But Byung-ho was staring directly at Jeho now. Slowly, a nasty smile spread across his face. "Well, well, look what crawled back home." The three men stood up and walked over to Jeho's table. They moved like a pack, just as they had in school. But something was different this time. They hesitated just a little. Something about the way Jeho sat perfectly still, watching them approach, made them uncertain. "Jeho," Byung-ho said, in a voice that tried to sound friendly but failed. "Heard you joined the army. Playing soldier, were you?" "Something like that," Jeho replied quietly. "Must have been tough," Dong-woo added with fake concern. "All that marching and following orders. Perfect job for someone who always did what he was told." Tai-min laughed. "Bet you spent the whole time hiding in some safe office. That is more your style." Jeho looked up at them. Really looked at them. These men had terrorized him for years. They had made him feel worthless and small. They had convinced him that he was nothing and would never be anything. Now he saw them for what they really were, scared little boys who had never grown up. They had never left this small town. They had never faced real danger or real challenges. They had never learned what they were truly capable of because they had never been tested. "You know," Jeho said calmly, "I met some interesting people while I was away. Learned some interesting things." "Like what?" Byung-ho sneered. "How to shine boots and follow orders. Like how small this place really is. How small the problems here are. How small some people choose to stay their whole lives." The three men exchanged glances. There was something in Jeho's voice that they had never heard before, something that made them want to step back, even though they could not understand why. "Still the same smart mouth," Tai-min said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," Jeho said, standing up slowly. "Not the same at all." When he stood, they could see how much he had changed. His shoulders were broader than any of theirs. His arms showed the kind of muscle that came from real work, not gym sessions. But more than that, there was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Something that had seen real darkness and walked through it without breaking. "Enjoy your breakfast, gentlemen," Jeho said politely. He placed money on the table and walked past them toward the door. As he passed Byung-ho, he paused for just a moment. "Things are different now," he said quietly, so only they could hear. "I am different now." Then he was gone, leaving the three men standing there wondering why they suddenly felt like they were the ones who should be afraid. Within 2 hours of their meeting at the restaurant, rumors began spreading through the town. Byung-ho wasted no time telling everyone who would listen about his encounter with Jeho. But the story he told was very different from what actually happened. "You should have seen him," Byung-ho laughed to a group of friends at his real estate office. still the same scared little mouse. Tried to act tough, but you could see he was terrified. Probably spent his whole military service cleaning toilets. Dongwu spread his own version at the bank where he worked as a manager. Poor guy thinks wearing a uniform makes him special. I felt sorry for him, really. Still living in Fantasyland. Tai Min told his story at the gym he owned. He has gotten bigger, but that does not mean anything. Big muscles do not equal courage. We all know what he really is inside. By evening, the stories had grown and changed as they passed from person to person. Social media made it worse. Posts appeared claiming that Jae-ho had been discharged from the military for cowardice. Others said he had never left Earth at all and had been hiding somewhere making up stories. The most cruel posts came from Byung-ho himself. He shared old photos from high school showing Jae-ho looking small and afraid. He added captions like, "Some people never change," and still telling tall tales to make himself feel important. But not everyone believed the stories. Han So-yum worked as a reporter for the local newspaper, and something about the whole situation bothered her. She had been a few years behind Jae-ho in school, but she remembered him differently than the bullies described. She remembered a quiet boy who was smart and kind, even when others were cruel to him. So-young decided to investigate. She started by calling the military recruitment office in Seoul. The officer she spoke to could not give her details about individual soldiers, but his tone changed when she mentioned Jae-ho's name. "I cannot discuss specific personnel matters," the officer said carefully, "but I can tell you that Captain Lee Jae-ho is currently on authorized leave. His service record is exemplary." Captain, that was interesting. Most soldiers who cleaned toilets did not become captains. So Young dug deeper. She found news articles from the past 3 years about humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. Most of the details were classified, but she learned that there had been a major conflict. Something called the Nexari War that had threatened human colonies in outer space. She also found references to something called the Interstellar Defense Corps. Elite soldiers who had fought battles on alien worlds. The articles mentioned several heroes by name, but most of the information was blocked by military censors. Meanwhile, Jae-ho spent the day with his family. His parents were overjoyed to see him, though his mother cried when she saw how much he had changed. His younger sister Mi-young was now 16 and full of questions about space and aliens, and what it was like to fight among the stars. "Is it true what they are saying online?" Mi-young asked as they walked through their old neighborhood. "That you never really went anywhere." Jae-ho smiled sadly. "What do you think?" "I think Byung-ho is the same lying bully he always was, and I think you have seen things that would scare him so badly he would wet himself." That evening, the bullies made their biggest mistake. They organized what they called a welcome home party at the town's main bar. They invited everyone they knew and made sure word got out on social media. The real purpose was to humiliate Jae-ho publicly, to force him to admit that his military service was nothing special. "Let him tell his war stories," Byung-ho announced online. "We will see how long he can keep up the act when everyone is watching." The challenge was clear. Show up and prove yourself, or be branded a coward forever. Jae-ho saw the posts. He read the comments from people he had once known. Some defended him, but many seemed ready to believe the worst. The boy he had been would have hidden at home and hoped it would all go away. But he was not that boy anymore. He looked at his military jacket hanging in his childhood bedroom. The medals caught the light from his desk lamp. Each one told a story of a battle fought and won, of humans proving they belonged among the stars. Tomorrow night, he would go to their party, not to prove anything to them, but to show his hometown what humanity had become while they were not paying attention. The real challenge was about to begin. The bar was packed with curious townspeople when Jae-ho arrived. Word had spread about the confrontation, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. Some came to support him, but many came hoping for entertainment. The bullies had done their work well, convincing people that this would be a night of exposed lies and public embarrassment. Byung-ho stood near the bar with his friends, wearing an expensive suit and a confident smile. He had prepared for this moment all day, thinking of cutting remarks and cruel jokes. He expected Jae-ho to show up nervous and defensive, easy prey for public humiliation. Instead, Jae-ho walked in carrying a metal case that nobody recognized. He moved with the same calm confidence he had shown at the restaurant. His simple clothes looked plain next to Byung-ho's flashy outfit, but there was something about his presence that made the room grow quiet. Well, Byung-ho announced loudly. Our war hero has arrived, ready to tell us all about your great adventures. Actually, yes, Jae-ho said simply. He walked to an empty table and set down his case. I thought you might like to see some proof. Byung-ho laughed. Proof? What are you going to show us? Your participation medals? Something like that. Jae-ho opened the case. Inside were objects that nobody in the room had ever seen before. They looked like they were made from materials that did not exist on Earth. Metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Devices covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. The room fell completely silent. Jae-ho lifted out what looked like a weapon. But unlike any weapon anyone had seen, it was sleek and curved, made from dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols glowed softly along its surface. This is a Nexari plasma rifle, he said calmly. Captured during the Battle of Kepler Station. It fires concentrated energy that can cut through 6 inches of reinforced steel. He set it carefully on the table and picked up another device. This one was smaller, about the size of a phone, but it hummed with power and projected a soft blue light into the air above it. This is a communication relay. It connects to ships anywhere in human space. Right now, it is receiving signals from the ISS Determination, currently patrolling the outer colonies near Alpha Centauri. Gasps came from around the room. People pressed closer to see the impossible objects. The blue light flickered and resolved into symbols that scrolled through the air like magic. But Jae-ho was not finished. He pulled out a small cube that seemed too heavy for its size. When he set it on the table, the wood beneath it began to bend downward. Gravitational manipulator. One of these powers the engines on our largest ships. This small piece weighs about 200 pounds because it contains compressed gravity fields. Tai Min tried to lift it and could not budge it even slightly. His face went red with effort, but the cube might as well have been welded to the table. Neat tricks, Byung-ho said, but his voice sounded strained. Could have bought these props anywhere. Could I? Jae-ho asked. He touched the plasma rifle, and it began to glow brighter. The symbols on its surface shifted and changed, responding to his touch in ways that no Earth technology could fake. Then he activated the communication device. The blue light expanded, and suddenly the room filled with a voice speaking in a language that was definitely not human. The words were harsh and clicking, completely alien. That is Commander Vextar of the Kepler Defense Fleet, Jae-ho translated. He is asking about my status. He fought beside me during the siege of their homeworld. The room was dead silent now. Even the bartender had stopped moving. Everyone stared at the impossible objects and listened to the alien voice that proved beyond any doubt that humans were no longer alone in the universe. But the most shocking thing was not the technology. It was the way Jae-ho handled it all so casually, like this was normal for him. Like he really had lived among the stars and fought battles that would become legend. Byung-ho's face had gone pale. All his prepared jokes and cruel remarks dried up in his throat. This was not what he had expected. This was not the scared boy he remembered. Questions, Jae-ho asked calmly, looking around the room. Nobody spoke. They were all too busy trying to understand that their quiet hometown boy had become someone who spoke with aliens and carried weapons from distant stars. For 3 days after the demonstration at the bar, the 3 bullies stayed quiet. The whole town was talking about what they had seen. Videos of the alien technology had spread across social media, though most people outside the town thought they were fake. But everyone who had been there knew the truth. Jae-ho thought maybe that would be the end of it. He had proven his point. He had shown them who he had become. Perhaps now they could all move on with their lives. He was wrong. On Thursday morning, his sister Maidum called him in tears. "Jae-ho, you need to come home right now. Something terrible happened." When he arrived at his family house, he found broken windows and spray paint covering the front wall. Someone had written cruel words about him and his family. They had thrown rocks through his parents' bedroom window while they slept. Glass was scattered across the floor where his mother kept her favorite plants. His father stood in the yard with a broom, quietly cleaning up the mess. His mother sat on the front steps crying, not from fear, but from anger at the senseless cruelty. "When did this happen?" Jae-ho asked, his voice very calm. "Around 3 this morning," his father replied. "The police came but said there were no witnesses. They took a report, but I do not think they will do much." My young was shaking with rage. "It was them. You know it was them. They could not face you directly, so they attacked our family instead." Jae-ho walked slowly around the house, examining the damage. He saw footprints in the soft soil beneath the windows. He noticed that the spray paint was still slightly wet in some places. He counted the rocks and studied where they had landed. His mind worked the same way it had when tracking enemy forces across alien battlefields. Every detail told part of the story. Every piece of evidence revealed something about who had done this and how. "I need to make some calls," he said quietly. That afternoon, Jae-ho visited the town records office. As a military veteran, he had access to certain databases that regular citizens did not. He also had friends in various government agencies who owed him favors from the war. What he found was interesting. Dongwoo's bank had some unusual transactions in its recent records. Money moving in ways that did not quite make sense. Payments to companies that did not seem to exist. The kind of financial patterns that suggested someone was hiding income from tax collectors. Tanmin's gym had some problems too. Safety violations that had been covered up. Insurance claims that looked suspicious. Workers who were not being paid properly according to labor laws. But Byung-ho was the most interesting of all. His real estate business was built on a foundation of lies. Properties sold to buyers who did not know about serious problems. Contracts that hid important information. Partnerships with construction companies that cut dangerous corners. All 3 men had grown rich by cheating others. They had spent years taking advantage of people who trusted them. Their success was built on the same cruelty they had shown in high school, just dressed up in business suits. Jae-ho spent the evening making copies of documents and organizing evidence. He worked with the same careful precision he had used when planning military operations. Every detail had to be perfect. Every piece of proof had to be unshakable. The next morning, he began making calls. First to the tax agency about Dongwoo's hidden income, then to the Labor Department about Tanmin's workplace violations, finally to the Consumer Protection Office about Byung-ho's real estate fraud. He did not threaten anyone or make demands. He simply provided information that public agencies needed to do their jobs properly. He answered their questions thoroughly and offered to provide additional evidence if needed. By noon, all 3 men had received official notices that their businesses were being investigated. Byung-ho called him that afternoon, screaming with rage. "What did you do? What lies did you tell them?" "No lies," Jae-ho replied calmly. "Just truth. The same truth you have been hiding for years. You cannot do this to us. We have lawyers. We have connections. So do I. The difference is that my connections fight for what is right, not for what is profitable." That evening, Jae-ho sat with his family as they ate dinner together. The broken windows were already being repaired. The spray paint had been cleaned away, but something had changed. His parents looked at him differently now, not with worry about their quiet, gentle son, but with respect for the man he had become. "You did not have to defend us," his mother said softly. "Yes, I did," Jae-ho replied. "Defending people who cannot defend themselves is what soldiers do. It is what humans do when they choose to be better than their enemies." Word spread quickly through the town about the government investigations. By Monday morning, everyone knew that the 3 bullies were in serious trouble with the authorities. People began choosing sides, and the divisions were not what anyone expected. The first person to visit Jae-ho was Nam Jinwoo, someone he barely remembered from high school. Jinwoo had been quiet back then, the kind of student who kept his head down and tried not to attract attention. Now he owned a successful technology company in Seoul. "I wanted to thank you," Jinwoo said as they sat in a coffee shop. "Those three made my life hell too. I was just too scared to ever fight back." "You did fight back," Jae-ho replied. "You built something good with your life. That is the best kind of victory." Jinwoo smiled. "Maybe. But it feels good to see them finally face consequences. How can I help?" Soon others came forward. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin had been the smartest girl in their class, but the bullies had spread rumors about her that nearly destroyed her reputation. She was now a successful surgeon in the city, but she had never forgotten the pain they caused. "They tried to ruin me because I would not let them copy my homework," she told Jae-ho. "They made up lies about me that followed me for years. I want to help however I can." But not everyone supported him. Lee Sang-ho had been class treasurer in high school and was now one of the wealthiest men in town. He owned several businesses and had political connections that reached all the way to Seoul. Sang-ho had never been close friends with the bullies, but he had business deals with all three of them. If they went down, he would lose money. Lots of money. "This has gone too far," Sang-ho told a group of town leaders at his expensive restaurant. "These investigations are hurting our whole community. People are starting to think we cannot be trusted." "Maybe we cannot be," said Mrs. Park, Jae-ho's old teacher. "Maybe it is time we faced the truth about what kind of people we have been protecting." The argument that followed split the room. Half the people agreed with Sang-ho that the investigation should be stopped to protect the town's reputation. The other half believed that justice was more important than appearances. Reporter Han So-young continued her own investigation. She had discovered that Jae-ho's military records were not just exemplary, they were extraordinary. Through careful research and Freedom of Information requests, she learned that he had been part of something called Operation Starlight. The operation was still mostly classified, but the few details she could find were incredible. It had been humanity's largest military action against an alien empire. Thousands of soldiers had fought across multiple star systems. The casualty rates had been terrible, but humanity had won. Jae-ho's name appeared in several after-action reports, always with the highest praise. He had led rescue missions behind enemy lines. He had defended civilian evacuation sites against overwhelming odds. He had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments again and again. "This man is not just a war hero," So-young told her editor. "He is one of the people who saved our entire species, and we are letting three small-town bullies try to destroy his reputation." Meanwhile, the investigations continued. Tax agents found evidence that Dong-woo had been stealing from his own bank for years. Labor inspectors discovered that Tae-min had been forcing his employees to work in dangerous conditions without proper safety equipment. Consumer protection officers confirmed that Byung-ho had knowingly sold houses with serious structural problems. The three men hired expensive lawyers and tried to use their political connections to make the investigations disappear. But Jae-ho had connections too, and his were in places they could not reach. Military intelligence officers who had served with him made quiet phone calls to ensure the investigations continued. Veterans who remembered his heroism wrote letters to government officials. Even some of his alien allies sent messages through official diplomatic channels, praising his character and service. The pressure began to show on the three bullies. Dong-woo started drinking heavily and making mistakes at work. Tae-min closed his gym temporarily, claiming it was for renovations, but really because he could not afford to fix all the safety violations. Byung-ho became paranoid, convinced that everyone was watching him and reporting on his activities. "He is destroying us," Byung-ho complained to his remaining friends. "We have to do something." But what could they do? Everything Jae-ho had done was completely legal. He had simply provided truthful information to the proper authorities. He had not threatened anyone or broken any laws. He was fighting them the same way he had fought alien empires, with superior strategy and unshakable discipline. The boy they had once bullied was systematically dismantling their entire world, and there was nothing they could do to stop him. The war hero had come home, and he was winning. Jae-ho knew that the real battle was not happening in courtrooms or government offices. It was happening in the minds of the people in his hometown. Half of them still believed the bully's version of events. They thought he was just a troublemaker who had returned to cause problems for successful local businessmen. That was about to change. Using his secure military communication device, Jae-ho contacted his former commanding officer, Colonel Martinez, who was currently stationed on Kepler Prime. Through her, he arranged something that had never been done before, a direct communication link between his small hometown and the heroes of humanity's greatest military victory. The town hall was packed that evening. Mayor Kim had announced that there would be a special presentation about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Most people came expecting a boring government lecture. Instead, they got something that would change how they saw their place in the universe forever. Jae-ho stood at the front of the room with his communication device. The blue light projected into the air, and suddenly the hall was filled with voices speaking in languages that had never been heard on Earth before the war. "Citizens of Earth," came the first voice, speaking through a translation device. "I am Commander Vextar of the Kepler Defense Fleet. I wish to speak about Captain Lee Jae-ho." The room fell silent. Everyone leaned forward, trying to understand what they were hearing. "Your Captain Lee saved my world," Vextar continued. "When the Nexeri Empire attacked our colonies, we thought all was lost. Our people were dying. Our children were hiding in caves while enemy ships burned our cities." The alien commander's voice carried pain and gratitude that needed no translation. "Captain Lee led the rescue mission that saved 10,000 of my people. He walked into enemy fire again and again to carry our wounded to safety. Many human soldiers died that day, but Captain Lee never stopped fighting." A second voice joined the conversation. This one sounded different, like music mixed with static. "I am Ambassador Theta Prime of the Crystalline Confederation. We do not usually speak highly of other species, but humans earned our respect through warriors like Captain Lee." The ambassador's words sent chills through the audience. In the Battle of the Spiral Nebula, Captain Lee's unit was surrounded by Nexeri forces. They had no hope of escape. Most species would have surrendered. Instead, Captain Lee and his soldiers fought for 3 days without food or sleep. They held their position until reinforcements arrived. "But that is not why we honor him," Theta Prime continued. "After the battle, when the shooting stopped, Captain Lee used his own medical supplies to treat wounded Nexeri prisoners. He showed mercy to enemies who had shown none to us. That is when we knew that humans were different from other warrior species." A third voice joined them, deeper and more mechanical. "I am War Chief Koren of the Forge Worlds. We have fought beside many species, but never have we seen anything like human determination." Koren's words rumbled through the hall like thunder. During the siege of Station 7, Captain Lee's company was reduced to 12 soldiers. They were ordered to retreat. Instead, Captain Lee asked for volunteers to stay and buy time for civilian evacuations. All 12 stayed. They held off an entire Nexeri battle group for 6 hours. When we finally reached them, we found Captain Lee still fighting. He was wounded in 4 places, but he was still protecting the last evacuation ship. His soldiers called him the Iron Wolf because nothing could break him. The voices continued for an hour, story after story of incredible bravery and tactical brilliance. Tales of a quiet boy from a small town who had become one of the most respected soldiers in galactic history. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. A Nexeri voice, speaking the language of humanity's former enemies. "I am Sub-Commander Zektha of the former Nexeri 7th Fleet," the voice said through the translator. "I fought against Captain Lee in 4 different battles. He defeated me every time." The audience gasped. They were hearing from the enemy themselves. "I hated him then," Zektha continued. But I understand now why we lost the war. Captain Lee and soldiers like him did not fight with anger or cruelty. They fought with purpose. They fought to protect, not to destroy. That is why humans won, and why we now serve alongside them in the Galactic Alliance. When the communication ended, the town hall remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, people began to understand what they had just heard. Their quiet neighbor was not just a war hero. He was a legend among the stars. Reporter So Young was frantically taking notes. This was the biggest story of her career, and it was happening in her own backyard. In the back of the room, Byung-ho, Dong-woo, and Tae-min sat with pale faces. They had tried to destroy the reputation of someone who was honored across the galaxy. They looked like insects trying to challenge a giant. After the alien testimonies, the three bullies knew they were finished. The entire town had heard proof of Jae-ho's heroism from across the galaxy. Their lies had been exposed completely. Their businesses were being investigated by multiple government agencies. Their reputations were destroyed. But desperate people do desperate things. Byung-ho had one last plan. If he could not destroy Jae-ho's reputation, maybe he could get him arrested. He spent 2 days carefully planning what he thought was the perfect trap. On Friday evening, Byung-ho called the police and claimed that Jae-ho had threatened him. He said the war veteran was unstable and dangerous. He provided fake text messages that he had created to make it look like Jae-ho was planning violence. Then he went to the park where he knew Jae-ho often walked in the evenings. He brought Dong-woo and Ta-min with him, along with several other men who owed him money. The plan was simple. They would attack Jae-ho and then claim he had attacked them first. With multiple witnesses and the fake text messages, surely the police would believe their story. What they did not know was that Jae-ho had been expecting something like this. He had fought too many battles and seen too many enemies to be caught off guard by such an obvious trap. When Jae-ho arrived at the park, he was not alone. Jin-woo and Dr. Yoon were with him, along with several other supporters. More importantly, reporter So Young was there with her camera, ready to document whatever happened. There he is, Byung-ho shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. The crazy soldier who has been threatening us. But as the group of men moved toward Jae-ho, something unexpected happened. Other people began emerging from the shadows around the park. Veterans from the local military base who had heard about the confrontation. Police officers who knew the truth about the fake reports. Even some of Jae-ho's former alien allies who had arrived on Earth for a diplomatic visit. "Gentlemen," Jae-ho said calmly, "I believe you wanted to speak with me." Byung-ho looked around nervously. This was not going according to his plan. "You have been sending us threatening messages. We have proof." Jae-ho smiled and pulled out a small device. "You mean these messages?" He activated the device, and everyone could hear recordings of phone calls. Byung-ho's own voice talking about creating fake evidence. Dong-woo discussing how to set up the ambush. Tai-min worrying about what would happen if they got caught. The military had taught Jae-ho many things. One of them was how to gather intelligence on enemy plans. "How did you get those recordings?" Byung-ho demanded. "The same way I tracked Nexari infiltrators on Kepler Prime," Jae-ho replied. "You were never as smart as you thought you were. Not in high school, and not now." Police sirens could be heard approaching, but they were not coming to arrest Jae-ho. They were coming to arrest the 3 men who had just been caught red-handed planning to file false police reports and commit assault. As the officers placed handcuffs on Byung-ho, he screamed at Jae-ho, "This is not over. We will find a way to destroy you." "No," Jae-ho said quietly. "It is over. It has been over since the moment you chose to attack my family instead of accepting that you had lost." The next morning, the local newspaper ran So Young's complete story. The headline read, "Galactic Hero Defeats Local Bullies." The article included everything. The alien testimonies, the evidence of business fraud, the recordings of the attempted frame-up. But the most powerful part of the story was not about the bullies at all. It was about what Jae-ho represented. He was proof that humans could overcome any obstacle, that they could grow from victims into heroes, that they could earn respect not through cruelty, but through courage and honor. Within hours, the story had spread across the internet. News agencies from around the world picked it up. The quiet town became famous overnight, not for the corruption of three small men, but for producing one of humanity's greatest heroes. Foreign reporters arrived to interview Jeho. Government officials came to honor him. Representatives from a dozen alien species sent messages of respect and gratitude. Through it all, Jeho remained the same quiet, humble person he had always been. He answered questions politely. He posed for pictures when asked, but he never claimed to be anything more than a soldier who had done his duty. "I am not special," he told one reporter. "Any human would have done the same thing if they had been in my place. That is what makes us human. We protect each other." The three bullies were convicted of multiple crimes and sent to prison. Their businesses were seized to pay back the people they had cheated. Their names became symbols of everything that was wrong with the old way of thinking. But Jeho did not celebrate their downfall. He had seen too much real evil in the galaxy to waste time hating small-minded people who had simply never learned to be better. 6 months after the final confrontation, Jeho's hometown had become completely different. The old fear and corruption that had allowed bullies to thrive was gone. In its place grew something new and hopeful. The changes started small. Students of the high school formed anti-bullying groups. Teachers began paying closer attention to signs of harassment. Parents started talking openly about problems they had once ignored. Mrs. Park, now close to retirement, said it was the first time in 30 years she had seen real kindness in her hallways. But the biggest change was what Jeho decided to do with his newfound fame. Using money donated by supporters from around the world, he established the Starlight Foundation. Its mission was simple but powerful: help young people who were being bullied and give them opportunities to discover their own strength. The foundation's first project was a training center built next to the high school. It offered everything from martial arts classes to computer programming. Students could learn practical skills while building confidence. Most importantly, they learned that being different was not a weakness but a strength. Every human has something special inside them, Jeho told the first group of students. Sometimes it takes facing challenges to find out what that is. Among the first students were some surprising faces. Park Min-ho had been one of Ta Min's followers in high school. After seeing what happened to his former leaders, he realized he had been on the wrong path. Now he helped younger students learn self-defense and conflict resolution. "I spent years being afraid," Min-ho told the group. "Afraid that if I did not pick on others, someone would pick on me. But Captain Lee showed me that real strength comes from protecting people, not hurting them." The training center attracted attention from beyond the town. Military recruiters began visiting regularly, looking for promising candidates for the expanding Interstellar Defense Corps. Young people who had once felt hopeless now had dreams of serving among the stars. Jin Woo moved his technology company's headquarters to the town, bringing jobs and opportunities. Dr. Yoon opened a medical clinic that provided free care to families who could not afford it. Other successful people who had faced bullying in their youth came forward to help. The alien community took notice too. Commander Vextar visited personally to speak at the Foundation's opening ceremony. His presence drew crowds from across the country. Seeing a real alien commander shake hands with local students made humanity's place in the galaxy feel real and immediate. "Your Captain Lee saved my world," Vextar told the audience. "Now he is helping to save your children from the darkness that lives in small minds and cruel hearts. This is why humans earned our respect. You turn your pain into purpose." Reporter So Young won several awards for her coverage of the story. But she chose to stay in town and document the changes happening there. She started a news program that focused on positive stories and community improvement. Her work inspired similar programs in other places. The three former bullies served their prison sentences in different facilities. Dongwoo used his time to get treatment for his drinking problem and take accounting classes, When he was released, he got a job as a bookkeeper and lived quietly. He never bothered anyone again. Timon learned carpentry in prison and found he was good with his hands. After release, he opened a small furniture shop and employed other former inmates who needed second chances. He still felt ashamed of his past, but he worked every day to make amends. Byung-ho had the hardest time accepting his new reality. He spent years trying to blame others for his problems. But eventually, even he began to understand that his cruelty had poisoned his own life as much as it had hurt others. When he was finally released, he moved to another city and worked in construction, keeping to himself. On the 5th anniversary of his return, Jae-ho stood in the town square at a ceremony honoring local veterans. Hundreds of people had gathered, including many of his former students who were now serving in the Interstellar Defense Corps themselves. His sister Ma-young, now a medical student, stood beside him with pride. His parents, healthier and happier than they had been in years, smiled from the front row. Mrs. Park, finally retired, wiped away tears of joy. As Jae-ho looked up at the evening sky, he could see the lights of ships moving between the stars. Some carried human crews to distant worlds. Others brought alien visitors to Earth. The galaxy had become humanity's new neighborhood. And they were good neighbors. The scared boy who had once walked these streets in fear was gone forever. In his place stood a man who had helped humanity earn its place among the stars. But more than that, he had helped his own community learn that every person deserved respect and every child deserved protection. The bullies had tried to make him small. Instead, they had helped create someone who would make the whole human race larger.